Today we're going to review for the Chapter 2 test on Thursday. This is for the algebra classes. The first problem we're going to do is to translate the following sentence into an equation. So you want to look for keywords to try and put this together as an equation. So we all know that a number represents a variable. So they give you the variable n, and it says added to 18. Then the word is usually means equals, and then it says 7 times the difference of n and 3. So all of these will be put together to make an equation. So a number n, we'll start with that, added to 18 would be plus 18. Then is meaning equal. Then you have 7 times, so 7, and then it's times the difference of n and 3. So since the difference of n and 3 is grouped together, we're going to multiply 7 times the group. Difference means subtraction, so we're going to subtract. And that would be your equation. The next equation we're actually going to write as a verbal sentence. So in this one, we need to write this out in words, making sure that we include all of the operations involved. So we're going to start on the left side here with 3 divided by y. So I'm just going to write that out. Then you want to look at the next operation, which is minus 5. So we're going to write minus 5. And then the equal sign, you can write this a couple of different ways. Sometimes is equal to, sometimes just equals. We'll simplify it and just write equals. And then we have x, so equals x. And then we need to write the product of y plus 7 because we want to group y plus 7 together. So x times the sum of y plus 7, not the product. And there's your sentence. Now we're going to solve each of these equations. So we want to always solve an equation by trying to isolate the variable. So t is the variable we want to solve for, so we want to get rid of the 7. We want to subtract it since it's positive to make it 0 on the left side, and then also whatever we do to one side we do to the other, so we're subtracting 7 from 11. Which would give us t equals 4. The next one, we're solving for v. So we're trying to isolate the v by taking away the 12. So since it's minus 12, we want to add 12 to both sides, which gives us v equals 7. Next, we're going to solve for x. We want to look at the operation here, so negative 8 times x, and we want to cancel out the negative 8 by making it 1, and we do that to both sides. So x would be negative 56 divided by negative 8. Since there's 2 negatives, the answer should be positive 7. The next one, you're going to solve for y. Notice there's a fraction next to the y, so we need to cancel out the fraction by multiplying by its reciprocal. It doesn't change the sign, so it's still going to be negative, but we're going to multiply by negative 9 over 7. We do that on both sides. This becomes 1. And then we have negative 6 times negative 9 over 7, so negative 6 over 1 times negative 9 over 7. We can just multiply the numerators together, which would be 54. And then we have divide by 7. It's going to be positive because you have a negative times a negative. So 54 divided by 7 is actually as simplified as we can get. So that's our answer. Here we're going to again solve. So we're going to solve for A. We have a proportion. Best way to solve a proportion is to cross multiply. So we have 27 times A equals 10 times 135. And we put those equal to each other. Then we need to solve for A, so we're going to cancel out the 27 by dividing, since it's 27 times A. That makes that 1, so we have A equals 1,350 divided by 27. Which equals 50. Now we're going to solve for B. Let me separate this. We want to cancel out the 5, and we also want to cancel out the 3. But I want to start with the 3 because that's not directly with the 5. So the 3 is positive, so we're going to subtract it to make it 0. And then we want to bring down the 5b as negative 5b since it's subtracting 5b in the first step. Equals negative 32 minus 3, which would be negative 35. And then we're going to divide both sides by negative 5, which would make that 1. And b equals 7, positive 7, since it's negative divided by a negative. Here we're going to write the equation and then solve the equation. So we need to think about what number decreased by 8.1 equals 4.9. So what number, that usually is going to be our variable. We could do x. Decreased by would be subtraction. So x minus 8.1. Then we have equals 4.9. We're going to solve for x, so we have minus 8.1. We need to add 8.1 to give us 0. And then x would be 4.9 plus 8.1, which is 13. The next one, we're also going to make this into an equation and solve. So we have to look for the key words. We have 15 is added to the product of a number and 6, and then the result is 9. So we want to take 15 plus, and then it says the product of a number and 6. So 6 times n. The result is 9, so that is, so it translates to equals 9. Now we're going to solve for n, so we want to subtract the 15 since it's positive, which will make it 0. We bring down 6n equals negative 6, and we're going to divide by 6 and divide by 6. So n would be negative 1. Here we're going to solve the word problem, so we need to again look for key words. So it says, during an evening out, Dean paid a cab driver $20. He then spent $25 on dinner and half of his remaining money on a painting. So we don't know his remaining money. Then it says he bought an umbrella for $23.75. and he had $42.15 left. So how much money did Dean have at the beginning of the weekend? So let's go back. He had $20 that he paid the cab driver. He then spent $25 on dinner and half of his remaining money on a painting. He bought an umbrella for $23.75 and had $42.15 left. So we know that it needs to equal $42.15. Then we need to think about, he had his money in the beginning, which we don't know, so that's going to be our X. If he paid the cab driver $20, that we need to subtract the $20 from the beginning. And then he spent $25 on dinner. So minus 25. And then half of his remaining money on a painting. So minus 1/2 times X. Then he bought an umbrella for $23.50. So again, subtracting. And he had $42.15 left. So let's think about this. We need to first combine like terms, which gives us $68.75 if we combine all the numbers. And that's equal to $42.15. Then we need to combine the like variables, so x minus 1/2 x is going to be 1/2 x. And now we need to solve for x, so we need to add the $68.75 to cancel that out. And we're going to move up here, so we have 1/2 x equals 110.9. And then we need to cancel out the 1/2, so we need to multiply by the reciprocal. And he had $221.80. Next, we're going to evaluate the absolute value expression. So we're going to plug everything in first. T is -3 minus n, which is 2. And now we need to solve. So we're going to multiply to get -9 minus 2. And we have the absolute value of this, so -9 minus 2 is -11. And the absolute value of -11 then would be +11. Here we're solving an absolute value equation, so we need to split it up into two equations to get our two answers. The second equation is going to make the 2 negative. So we solve for t by subtracting 4. We can also do that to the other equation. So we have 2t equals negative 2, and we have 2t equals negative 6. So we're dividing by 2. And that will give us our two answers. So t would be negative 1, and t would be negative 3. And then when it says graph the solution set, all it means is to put these on a number line. So we would just draw a quick number line. And put a point at negative 1 and a point at negative 3. Here we're going to also solve for the absolute value. So we have r plus 3 equals 1, and r plus 3 equals negative 1. Notice I also take the absolute value symbols away from the equations once I separate them. So r would be negative 2, and r would be negative 4. And again, we have our number line. We graph by putting a point at each, negative 2 and negative 4. Here we're using cross products to determine whether the ratios are forming a proportion or not, so we're going to cross multiply. So we have 14 times 51, which is 714, and we need to see whether that's equal to 17 times 39, which is 663. So it is not, so we would write no. Here we're solving the proportion, so again we cross multiply. We have 9 times a, which is 9a, and 12 times 15, which is 180, and then we divide by 9 to give us a equals 20. Here we're solving the equation for t, but we have variables on both sides, so we need to combine the variables and the like terms first before we solve for t. So we need to bring the 9 and the 3 together, and we need to bring the negative t and the t together. So let's start by bringing the numbers together. I'm going to move the 3 from one side to the other, so I need to do the opposite. And then I rewrite what I have. Then I need to bring the t's together, so I'm going to bring the negative t over by adding it so that I move it to the other side, and then I'm going to combine the t's to give me 1t plus 1t, or 2t equals 6, and then we divide both sides by 2, so t would be 3. Here we notice that we need to use the distributive property, so we're going to distribute 2 times y minus 2 times 6, which is 12. Haven't done anything to the right side yet, so I'm going to rewrite it. Now I need to combine like terms. I can combine like terms on the right side by just reading from left to right. So I have 3y minus y, which gives me 2y. And then we talked about this kind of problem. Whenever we have the same variable terms but different number terms, then we're going to write no solution. Here we're going to solve for z, so we see two opportunities where we need to distribute. So we have 17 plus 3 times z minus 3 times 2 minus 11z equals negative 7 times z plus negative 7 times 2, or negative 14, and then plus 14. So we want to look on either side first to see if we can combine terms, which we can. So on the side with the negative 7z, we can combine negative 14 plus 14, and that actually equals 0, so we don't need to write anything there. We can just keep it as negative 7z. And then we have 17 plus 3z minus 6 minus 11z. So we can combine the 17 and the 6 by reading from left to right. So 17 minus 6 is 11. And then we have 3z minus 11z, again reading from left to right. So that's going to give us minus, or negative, 8z. Now we need to combine like terms across the equal sign, so we need to take the 8z and move it with the 7z, since we don't want one side with nothing, so we need to move the 8z by adding it. That takes the entire term and brings it to the other side. Negative 7 plus 8 is 1, so we don't need to write the 1. So we have z equals 11. Here we're going to solve for r, so we need to get everything away from the r except for the r. So we have r over n plus t equals 4v. So we need to start with what's not directly with the variable that we need to cancel everything out with. So we subtract t. We have r over n equals 4v minus t. Since we need to cancel out the n, we need to multiply, since that is r divided by n, and we multiply on the other side by n. Since there was already a grouping on one side, this right side, we need to group that together and into parentheses to say that it's multiplied by n. So our answer would be 4v minus t in parentheses times n. Here we're finding the percent of change, and then we need to say that this is an increase or decrease percent. So if we're going from 60 to 75, so we need to look at whether the original to the new is an increase or decrease, which 60 to 75 would be an increase. And then we need to set up our ratio. So we subtract our higher number minus our lower number, so we don't have a negative. And then we always put that over 60. So if we have 75 minus 60, that gives us 15 over 60. But then we need to write this as a percent. So the easiest way to do this is to divide 15 divided by 60, which gives us 0.25. And then we change our decimal to a percent by moving our decimal place 2 spots to the right. So it's going to give us 25%. Here we need to find the discounted price, so we're going to take our price and multiply by the discount, but we multiply by the discount as a decimal, not a percent. So to do that, we make our decimal point move to the left 2 spots, and we have 18 times 0.25, which gives us 4.5. And then we need to subtract that from 18, since this is a discount, which gives us 13.5. And then our final problem, we're going to solve for h. We're given a formula, and then we're given a few more things to go into our formula once we solve for h. But it says a container company wants to make a cylindrical cardboard container with a volume of 4752 cubic inches. The formula V equals pi r squared h represents the volume of a cylinder. In this formula, V represents the volume, R represents the radius of the cylinder's base, and H represents the height of the cylinder. we need to solve for h. So the formula was v equals pi r squared h. We need to get everything away from the h except for the except for the h. So we need to cancel out the pi r squared. Since this is all multiplication on the right side, we can take the pi and the r squared at the same time and divide both out. And whenever we do to one side, we do to the other. So that becomes 1, and then we have v over pi r squared. So this would be our formula where we solved for h. Now it needs more information here, so it gives us the volume is 4752. And then we have here that it gives us the radius is 9, and we need to solve for h. So we need to plug in, or the height, which is h. So we need to plug in the 4752 for v, volume, over pi, and then we have 9 for our r. So we have 9 squared. Now if we take 4752 and divide by pi times 9 squared, pi times 9 squared is 81 times 3.14, which is 254.34. And we're going to take the 4752 and divide by 254.34. Which gives us about 18.6 or 18.7. And that concludes our review. So you should have realized that most of these are very similar to, if not the same, as our Jeopardy review that we've done for the past couple of days. So hopefully, if you feel comfortable playing Jeopardy and now going through this review, you should feel comfortable in doing well on the test.